Now, public recitals of the Qur'an are generally given by men. It's a long-standing tradition, but times are changing, and a young Scottish law graduate is leading the charge. She joins me this morning, Madinah Javed. Good morning, Madinah.
Good morning, Kay.
Good morning. And you created the hashtag Female Reciters movement.
That's right. I created the hashtag Female Reciters movement to raise awareness of Muslim women's voices and to encourage women to share their recitations online. And as you mentioned, the Muslim soundtrack is a male one, so I've been working towards changing that by elevating women's voices and reviving a forgotten and beautiful Islamic tradition.
So listen, you're going to have to fill me in a little bit on the tradition. When we talk about recitation, when does that take place and what kind of setting? How important is it to your faith?
The Qur'an is a recited book which touches the hearts of men and women. Often Western universities have treated the Qur'an as a historical and literary document until quite recently. But the Qur'an, being the cornerstone of Islam, is constantly recited throughout the Muslim world on special occasions, holidays, funerals, weddings, and everyday prayer, as well as for no reason other than its central place in the Muslim's everyday life. And both men and women learn to recite the Qur'an, but audiences are segregated in certain parts of the Muslim world for female reciters, according to local social customs rather than precisely Islamic necessity.
Right, okay.
The purpose of the recitation is really, it's often compared to as if you're giving an act of charity. So the purpose of reciting the Qur'an is to gain blessings and as a means of creating an atmosphere of tranquility and awe.
And is it usually performed by a cleric, or can it be a layperson?
Anybody can recite the Qur'an, so all Muslims will recite the Qur'an in their daily worship, but often different people will have different proficiencies. So often you will have public reciters who will recite at gatherings, and anyone can do this.
Right, okay, but in certain cultural settings, they're not necessarily comfortable with women doing it. We also have with us Mona Siddiqui, a Professor of Islamic and Interreligious Studies at New College, Edinburgh University. Morning, Mona.
Morning, hey. Morning.
Good morning. I guess this is common in many faiths, isn't it? That the role ascribed to men is different from the role ascribed to women, and the acceptability, if you like, of females taking certain roles is not necessarily what it is with men.
Yeah, I think following on from what Madinah said about the kind of versatility of Quranic recitation, that it's everywhere. It's such an intrinsic part of the social and cultural landscape of most Muslim countries in a way that we in the West can't really imagine, because you don't hear biblical recitation going on, scriptural recitation around you, whereas in many parts of the Islamic world, it's just part and part of the social fabric. But when it comes to actual recitation as a focus of authority and leadership and kind of public piety, that's when the problem sets in. And actually, it's quite a modern problem, this segregation between women's authority and male authority, because historically, there have always been female reciters. And in many parts of the Islamic world, there are still lots of female reciters of the Qur'an who lead by example, who teach classes, who perform publicly. But I think the real issue is that, what was once just considered a pious thing is now really part of an equality thing as well. That will women's voices and women's recitation be accepted in the same way as male recitation?
So Madinah, what was your motivation then, and how have you been received?
There's been such a positive reaction from women all over the world. A lot of women have told me that they've only been exposed to male reciters, and hearing a female voice really makes them feel more connected to the Qur'an and God. And what motivates me really is my love for the Qur'an. It's something that I really love, and it gives us such a sense of peace and tranquility. And even when I've travelled the world and seen women reciting in gatherings, and you can see like how much confidence and love that they have for it, and it really deepens your respect for Muslim women. And yeah, so I really think it's important that we hear the female voice, and I think the restrictions that have sort of come into place in recent times are quite objectifying towards women. There's this notion that the female voice is too distracting or too sinful, and this is something that's also similar in other religions. They have the same concept that a woman's voice shouldn't be heard. So I remember I was speaking to a Jewish lady, and she said that they have the same sort of premise in their faith too, but actually these are patriarchal restrictions, and it's not just something that affects one faith community, but it's quite a wider issue.
So have you had any negativity?
Yes, certainly. A lot of the abuse and negative attitudes have been based on gender and the fact that it's a woman reciting the Qur'an. But I think whenever people want to silence women, it just makes me want to work harder to ensure that women are heard. So the negative attitudes just show that we have a lot more work to do and to make meaningful change in our communities.
Well, why did it mean so much to you?
It just means so much to me because it gives me such a direct connection with God, and I think it's so hard to explain, but when you recite the Qur'an or listen to the Qur'an, it's such a beautiful and peaceful feeling, and that's I guess why.
Mona, do you think this is a step forward?
I think just in the same way that, even if we think about Christian traditions where women have had to fight for decades to have women priests or women bishops, to have women visibly in forms of religious authority. I think the Muslim world, especially the Muslim world in the West, I would say, ironically, is lagging behind. But I think the slight caveat is that things don't translate equally across cultures and civilizations. So what Madinah is saying is that it's her love for the Qur'an, it's her love for recitation, it's her love for women's voices to be heard. And I think I applaud all that. But ultimately, for a lot of women, there'll be a higher purpose, which is when will more women get recognition for their authority, which is intrinsic to the work they're doing. And I think there's still a long way to go with that.
Yeah. Well, Madinah, would you mind doing a short, is that appropriate for you to do a short piece for us?
It'd be my pleasure to do that, and considering that women are restricted from reciting on radios in Egypt since recent days, it would be a pleasure to recite on radio today.
Oh, well, our pleasure too. You go ahead when you're comfortable.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.
I don't want to interrupt you there, Madinah. That was really, really beautiful. Thank you so much. An education for us all. Madinah Javed, thank you. And thanks you also to Mona Siddiqui, Professor of Islamic and Interreligious Studies at New College, Edinburgh University.